Hello, everyone. How is it going? Today we have with us Jakub Rudnik, VP Content at Shortlister. Hey, Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you so much for taking our time. Um, it's really exciting to have you and talk to you about the amazing work you are doing and some SEO stuff as well.
Yeah, for
But
sure. Glad to be here.
but before we start, Jacob, it would be amazing, if you could give us a little bit of introduction about yourself and also your company?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you said, I'm the VP of Content and SEO over at Shortlister. We're a startup. Uh, I think most people will see our website. We look like a listing service similar to a G2 or a Capterra, but we're in the wellness space originally, but we've expanded to benefits and HR technology. So anywhere under the HR umbrella, we've got different pockets. We've got lists, what list of wellness companies. You would search that term, find us, find all the companies that work with us. So that's a bit about our company. We've got this public site. We work with brokers who sell large healthcare wellness deals to Fortune 500, or they procure them for a Fortune 500 company. So that's a little bit what makes us different from something like a G2. We just have a different customer. It's the broker that we work with really closely, that we also work with vendors and people, who become leads. Prior to that, I was at G2, so I'll bring up G2, I'm sure, many
Oh,
times. So I was at G2 for 4 years, started as I don't know, content specialist, and ended up running a 22 person content marketing team. I was responsible at the end for kind of launching and then scaling our learn.g2 blog. So all of our top
okay.
of funnel content. Um, I mean, the thing that, I think the proudest metric that I've ever had is taking that from, 10 or 15,000 people a month to 1.5 million people a month, this blog, and doing that through, content clustering, link building, good keyword research, and just having a team of writers who really, were strong at SEO and kind of crafting good storytelling. So that's where I was before that. I'm a journalist in a past life. That's how I kind of got into this. I teach journalism classes at DePaul University for undergrads right now. I live in Chicago, so that's me. That's what I'm doing right now, and where I've been before.
Right. Also, like very interesting, like, since like having that writing background, the journalism background, and, doing SEO. And like you said, for G2, it is an amazing metric to achieve. And, I mean, let's talk a little bit more about it. So, I mean, how much role did content play, in that strategy that you did for G2? And how much role did, links play? I mean, a little bit more about that strategy that helped you achieve that metric, that would be great.
Yeah. So I was leading the content side. The team, I said is 22 people. So there's 22 writers, email people, conversions. We had another 8 or so link builders. So it's 30 of us total. And so there was another manager, Levi Olmsted, who's leading marketing teams now. So we were leading these two teams kind of side by side and simultaneously. So first of all, we don't get to 1.5 million without content. Certainly, we don't get to it without links. I think we get, if we just completely ignore links, we get closer. We just wouldn't have anything without content. But ultimately, like, the links mattered so much for kind of, powering the overall domain. Levi and his team were so good at really taking a brand new domain. First, we moved from blog.g2crowd.com to learn.g2crowd.com. So we did a migration once. And then towards the end of my tenure, they moved from G2 Crowd to G2. So there's another, one. So we've got these two different migrations and, a brand new subdomain and all this stuff. And without the links, I think it takes us much longer to get where we were. For the first 6 months on learn.g2crowd.com, it just went really slowly. The pace at which we picked up keywords and, moved from 40 to 30 to 25, that pace was so much slower than after 6-9 months when we had really developed a lot of links and built that domain authority up a little bit. At the same time, just getting, it's like the cart and the horse, what's happening, because you get content that ranks. It's much easier to pick up organic links, your keyword, like we write a really nice cluster. All of a sudden, the 12th article we write in that cluster ranks pretty instantly, but the first one we wrote in that cluster took forever to really pick up. So it's a little bit of, both. I think the type of content that we were writing, it was a lot of, what is this? How does this work? All that top of funnel educational content. That's where our bread and butter was. Some of those posts do need 10, 20, 30 links, but in general, a lot of that instructional type content only needed 1 or 2 links to really be a top 5 or top 10 article. So for us, it was getting the content right away, and then Levi deliver on one really good link from someone in his network, and all of a sudden we'd be in business. So I think hopefully that explains kind of like that balance for us. And just looking at the size of the teams, they're massive content teams, obviously 20 writers or something like that, and then 8 link builders. But that I think also puts into scale where we put our emphasis, right? About 3 times the size on the amount of writing. I think over time though, because we went from pretty little content and little content that was actually going to rank, it was good. We needed to build that base of content before we really emphasize the link. So I think over time, you'd probably see more of a balance had I stayed there. And, we kind of looked at it more as like a 5-year plan. But once you have 1,000 blog posts that have been optimized correctly, have been targeted towards the right keyword, clustered correctly, all that stuff, you wouldn't need to be writing 1,000 articles a year. You can build the links and really just keep those at a high ranking or move them from 10 to 5 to 3, et cetera. So I think that's just where we were as kind of a new content team. Despite being so big, it was a really, a new team. So that was our focus there.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much for explaining it so perfectly. It just explains it so brilliantly. Talking about content, Jakub, I mean, what are your thoughts on should content be outsourced?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it both ways. I've had G2, we had 20 people writing.
That's what I asked this question.
And then I've at Shortlister, we have a small writing team. I've got 3 writers right now. But I've worked in an agency, we've outsourced. Even at G2, we used agencies at different points. It depends. Depends on what are your needs. G2 or even Shortlister have very different content needs than a traditional SaaS company that's in one space. For G2, it's just a quantity play. G2 has 1,000 different categories, and in theory, there's you're competing against 1,000 categories of SaaS products. So not just if you're a Salesforce, you compete against every CRM or every CRM adjacent thing for this top of funnel traffic. But at G2, you're competing against Salesforce. You're competing against HubSpot. You're competing against Marketo and, I don't know, any sort of social media platform and any data analytics platform. You're competing against all of them. Even though they're not your business competitors, they're your content competitors. So for us, we just needed people who could create a lot of content. There was never going to be enough. If you're at a more traditional company where you have 1 or 2 or 3 products and you're in a much smaller niche, your content needs aren't as big from a quantity perspective, but you do need quality. So either way, you need to guarantee that quality. So that can be an agency if you find the right one. It could be, internal if you hire the right people, but often your content needs quantity wise won't be so big. So it makes more sense to you need someone at a project level basis, right? Than just constantly churning out blogs 3 a week, every week, like G2 needs. So, if you're not going to need a content writer for 3 years, an agency, from a cost perspective, probably makes more sense there. And then especially if an agency has that experience in your niche, if you have a small content team, 1 content manager or something like that, training new writers on your business, your product, your niche, all the conversion points, the pain points, That's a lot of time and energy, even if you have a great writer and even if you have someone who knows SEO, which often isn't the case when you get a new writer, especially if you're paying kind of like that entry level or second type of job level. So that can be a really good reason to use an agency, especially if they have that niche, they really know your business already. So yeah, it can go both ways, really case by case. But yeah, that'd be my thoughts. I've used them both successfully, used them both, without success too, and have had pain points on both sides. So very much case by case.
And I can totally understand, whenever you talk about G2, I can totally understand the level, of content and links needed, because so we work with a client, again, who competes with G2, but not like directly as a business, but it's more about, the keywords and the other phrases. So I totally understand how it must have been.
Yeah, it's an interesting, not many companies have that type of content scale and need, and then just getting your brain in that, business competitors versus content competitors. That's a thing I haven't heard a lot, but I think really can matter when you're, depending on your type of business.
Right. So I think almost like around, like we do around like 130 articles for them, every like month. So I can totally understand. But yeah, interesting stuff. We're talking about content, like long form content is gaining popularity. So what do you suggest as the average number of words, per blog article? Like any strategy you follow? I mean, how do you look at it?
Yeah. So I don't think there's a one size fits all for a given blog. I think that's an instinct for somebody, right? And I think I'd see it. I think it's just in publications in general, having written for the Tribune for a while, and I always get 600 to 800 words. It was just it. And sometimes your story is a 450 word story. Sometimes the story needs 1,500 words to really be told. But you have 600 to 800 words, right? So I think it just comes from editorial kind of mindset, and it's just been a thing forever to want one word count. What we do, kind of built this at G2, refined it, and it's no perfect science, but, analyzing what already exists on, the search results for the topic, so type in the keyword that you're looking to rank for, look at the top 5, maybe top 10 articles, just look at the keywords from there, use one of those free keyword or not keyword, but word count tools, word count counter.io or whatever it is. See what those counts are. You'll typically see, if you looked at 5, 3 or 4 of them have roughly the same word count. There's one different one. Depends on the saturation, the difficulty of the keyword, how tightly Google knows what you're looking for if you type in that word. But I think that gives you a good idea. I'd say on average, if we're trying to put some sort of numbers down, most of our articles will be in that 800 to 1,500 word count. That doesn't mean we don't do things longer, especially if we're doing like a pillar page. If we're saying like the ultimate guide to CRM, if you write 800 words, no one's like, you can't get anything out of that, right? But if you're asking, if you're trying to write like, what is a CRM? You don't need to write 5,000 words, because the general, like someone that's searching that literally doesn't know what a CRM is, and they're just trying to get that answer. They heard it in a webinar, they saw it on Twitter, whatever it is, and they're in a business class. They just need to know what the CRM is. They need the basic answer. So they give them the 500 words and don't, overwhelm them, but just give them that really quickly. So I think you'll see that there definitely is this emphasis on longer content and, being more robust. I think at the same time, some people are even taking their big pillar pieces and ripping it into more specific articles and answering more deeper questions, because the top of funnel stuff is really saturated when companies like G2 are competing against all the people in the market already. So sometimes it makes sense to go with that shorter snippet, do really well at interlinking and giving people the next answer that they might need. But yeah, I think again, most of your content like this falls in that 800 to 1,500, maybe 2,000 word range. That's where I'd say our sweet spot generally is. But we'll go up or down given the topic too.
Right. Also, like, you said, I mean, even like Surfer SEO has come up with, I think it has been there for almost a year now, but, they even like compare the top 10 articles with you, for you. So you can actually see not even the average number of words in those articles, but you can also see the various topics or words that have been used, So, definitely, you can utilize tools and actually see what the average number of words is for that particular keyword.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, there's the word count is one thing, but when we're trying to write, this is the biggest learning from my first day at G2 till my last day was we used to just write content based on what we, the writer, maybe the editor, thought should be in the content. You just got the topic and you just wrote. And Google gives you like Google tells you what the best content is. Google
Right.
puts the number one article there for a reason. And that can be links, but it's also what's the title of the article, what's the header, what's the content within,
And
what is it linking to? All
even
this.
what is the intent? I mean,
Yeah,
so for you, it might be a service page, but Google might be considering that keyword as an informative keyword and actually ranking a blog page. So what is the intent as per
exactly.
Google? Absolutely.
And so you already know what Google thinks that search is. And so many times we I've seen I've even seen SEO people, but especially non-SEO people want a certain page to rank for one thing, and that's just not how it works. So for you, knowing that you want to rank for that keyword, seeing what's already out there, emulating it to some extent. Like if you look at the top 10 search results and one header is in every single one, you have to have that or you're just not going to rank. Like you're missing a key component. At the same time, often if you go and type in what is CRM, there are 10 blogs from 10 really good websites that are all run with like SEO people behind them. They're they're smart. They know what they're doing. So if you just write the exact same blog post and you just write it newer, it won't rank. So you need to figure out what's missing. What did the content writers miss? What is the question that someone would want answered? What's the original research? What's that data point? All that stuff. If you can find that, how to make your article better than what it already exists while also doing the same framework as them, like that's the sometimes it's easy in a kind of a low competition newer content market, but especially like I'll keep referring to CRM, but something that's much more mature, tons of competitors, that's where it gets really tough to be in content, is to figure out what can set your content apart while still following that template that Google's given you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like also talking about content, there are so many like AI tools and stuff now in the market that people are using. Especially talking about like content generators. What are your thoughts on content generators in particular?
Yeah, it's certainly new. I have yet to see someone like, especially at like G2 scale or something, use content generators. It's something that like G2 wanted to do. If you can, a writer is expensive, right? A writer costs a lot of money. Content costs a lot of money to create. It's just a time intensive thing. And so, I mean, it's the number one thing in content marketing is just getting copy created. So if you can do that through AI, like you would be solving a massive business problem and it'd be a huge differentiator. I've been tracking, and I'm going to forget the company's name, but a company that does, because again, I'm in this content marketing journalism. I'm straddling two different, worlds, but often there's a ton of overlap. And there are a lot of AI companies that are trying to attract the news and do essentially local news created from an AI. And I've seen case studies there, and the one that's standing out to me is like a local sports, and that's actually where my journalism side is. I'm interested in the sports world, so it's intrigued me. Like when you think about, say, like a high school sports world and how many journalists have been let go, even pre-pandemic, but post, like so many games that used to be covered by a professional journalist no longer are, because it doesn't make any sense from a financial standpoint. But something like that, you can have AI take in the set of data and spit out an article that looks 85% like a human wrote it. If you take an editorial touch on top of that, I think there will always need to be some sort of human editor, at least in the near to midterm. Like we're just not there at the technology, but with a human editor, just sprucing things up, maybe doing the SEO as well, work like figuring out the keywords and the interlinking and things. I think you can potentially do it now. I've never done it, but again, I've seen this case study where it was done on the news side. And I think that there are content applications. Certainly there's always a lot of overlap. So, but I think you'll need that human to really, again, not just create content, because an AI can do that right now, but create content that ranks and generates leads and generates traffic. You're going to need somebody to take it just that final step, I think.
Perfect. Also, like when you're planning a content strategy, like what role does user experience, play in that?
I mean, without the user, what's the point of the content, right? I think that's another thing that we saw at G2 is we had at one point just a number of blogs was the KPI, like write 500 blogs this half, and those blogs generated no traffic. They weren't thinking about who was reading them, how we get to the person, what does the user do once if they found this blog, what do they do when they get there? So it's huge, right? You already mentioned user intent, but what does somebody who's searching this term want to find when they get to our site? So let's give them that, right? Let's give them the answers that they're looking for, and then let's give them the next couple of answers. Maybe it's not the full, maybe it's a shortened version, and we link over to the full version of the article or something. But we want to give them what they're expecting when they come in. So thinking about the user experience there, again, delighting them, giving them something that goes beyond the average content. Like often I think people will go to a content piece because they need an answer, but they're a little bit skeptical. This is written by someone who's never worked in this field, whatever. So let's give them the statistics and the research and the graphics that show that we know what we're talking about, that we've lived this. Let's interview experts. Let's go beyond and really go again above what everybody else is doing, just the same regurgitated content by a content writer. And then, from an experience point, what would be, this is like where conversions come in, and conversions are really difficult. They're the toughest part of content. It's easy to get someone to your page, getting someone to turn into a lead when they don't want to give you their email or phone number. I don't want to do that when I go to a page. So how do you do that? So giving them something through your gating or whatever else your conversion is that they really want, right? Don't force them into something, but what would the person who came in for that specific question really want on the other end? So really thinking about that, you won't ever have, even 10% conversions on most things, but even getting, doubling what you normally do just by giving something that they can actually use and getting them into that sales cycle. I think you're thinking about, user experience at all those different levels, your visuals, your flows, all that stuff.
Driving engagement with an increasing number of channels available to connect with customers, seems like a challenge now. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, it's tough. Like G2, we had especially at the end, 30 people on content. We had 80-person marketing team. Even then it was difficult to hit all the channels we wanted to and do them well. We did, fairly well, I'd say, but it was still, there were some places where, we just couldn't invest the resources, at a place like Shortlister where we're not even at 30 full-time employees. Picking channels is really, and picking the right channels and then investing properly is really important. I think smartly don't go to too many. But the best advice is and I tell this to the journalism students too, I think being really strong in the number of channels that you can properly administer and operate and interact with customers is important. So for us, it's 2, and I don't even know if we can do 2 well. We have LinkedIn and Twitter on social. We currently don't even use like a chat bot. We're getting there. But we really just from a pure resources standpoint, we can't do more than that. I think most businesses will be in that kind of realm. It's like everybody's instinct to say, well, TikTok is big. And I saw one article on Business Week that said you have to be on TikTok as a business. Like if you can't do TikTok well, don't do it. Like don't waste your time. It's a lot of effort to create videos. It's a lot of effort to create these ideas. And if you're trying to do 6 different social media plus email plus every other type of engagement where people are coming inbound, you're just not gonna be able to do it well. And so if you have 10 accounts with 100 followers each, or you have one account with 5,000 engaged users, like just do the one really well. So again, that'll all depend on your resources, size of the company, all that. And then knowing where your people are. For us, we're B2B. Let's be on LinkedIn. Twitter is kind of an afterthought. There is B2B chatter on Twitter, but LinkedIn is where our customers live, right? So let's just do LinkedIn really well. If you're B2C, that might be TikTok for you. It might be, if you got a young demographic, but if not, maybe it's Facebook. Maybe your demographic is older. So really do Facebook well, right? Like be awesome there, but just be a destination wherever you are, and don't spread yourself too thin, because you won't see that results till you like really reach a critical mass. And that takes like engagement takes a lot of effort. It doesn't just happen by posting 3 times a day and walking away.
Email marketing, a lot of people say email marketing is dead. I mean, I don't believe that, but what are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely not dead, right? So I know from my inbox that it's not dead. It is another place where it's certainly changing. Emails are like, your inbox is more sacred than ever before. Yeah. I think we're seeing that. Kind of mentioned that in the conversions. People are much slower to give their email, right? It's connected everywhere. If you have too many emails, you get overwhelmed, you fall behind. Like it's an issue. So as far as email marketing, I think you have to, again, create a destination, right? If that's educational. I think that there's in all of these channels, a lot of people do it because they believe they have to do it, right? Yeah. It's a box to check. Every marketer should do this. And they're putting in 50, 60, 70% of the effort you need, or have send out their product or something. And then they wonder why they don't have results. You need to do whatever you're going to do really well. If I'm thinking of like the B2B, like retail type emails I delete almost every one of them. It has to be like the best sale they've ever done for me to open it and go in. But like, that's a reason for email, right? And it does attract me. I wouldn't go back to the Nike outlet unless you were emailing me if I don't have a need. But so that like, there's a use case for more of like a B2B, software. So many try to do the educational email, but all that means is somebody on their email marketing team one day before this thing went out said, does anybody know of any good articles this week? And maybe they found one, and there's no real thought to it. I don't know why I'm getting these links. I don't know what it is. I think, we see now, and I keep tying it to the journalism side, but like all these people are doing like Substacks and really hyper specific educational email newsletters. And so people are subscribing to these and getting a lot of value from somebody who's like deep diving in the niche. And as email marketers, generally we're like too broad, too high level. I don't know why I'm getting this. It's just a series of links and then one promotion to their own product or their own webinar or something. But I think that the Substack lesson is, if you do it really well, if you really get to somebody and like a need that they have and something they want to learn, people are clicking and reading. I do a Substack high school sports one, but I'm getting 60% open rates, and I'm getting 25% of people clicking a link. They're not all to me, but because I found a hole in the market. So if you can, as a business, figure out what that hole in your market is, lightly sprinkle in your own stuff, but look for really good emails in your inbox. Which ones are the ones that you're clicking? Which ones are the ones that you're reading? And try to take the best pieces that they have and see if any of them apply to your own product, your own niche, whatever it is.
Right. So, like talking again about G2, your past experience, you were handling like a huge volume of content. So, a company or a business, which is handling a huge volume of content. I mean, how do you suggest, to keep a track on the quality?
Yeah, on the quality. I mean, so just from a process standpoint, the leadership level. So for me, I was, determining with G2, okay, this month it'll be CRM related content. This month it'll be, so I'm looking at a high level, speaking to business leaders in the sales team or business development or whatever. Where do we need more emphasis? Where do we need more traffic? So that's being determined there. We had some team leads who were helping to go underneath of that and pick more at the topic by topic level. They were working with writers. Ultimately we wanted to train our writers to be able to identify a good topic, use SEO tool to pick those and things. But from there, they're writing especially over beyond 6 months, we spent a lot of emphasis on training for what's good quality content, what's the structure with the outline, how do we do featured snippet optimization, how do we select our headers, how do we write a headline, like we're doing workshops regularly to work on each element of the piece. So overall, I think we were just seeing like a lift on the quality broadly. But then you still have, if we have 20 writers, the quality across the board is not exactly the same as much as we want it to be. So from there, we did a number of quality checks, and ultimately I would want some of these to come down. But especially early on, like we had a peer review process, then we had an actual like a copy editor, then we had our SEO optimizer to do those final checks. We had somebody working on graphics to, especially with the more really like high importance pieces, to have somebody doing that. I think maybe that's something that we should have done down the road and had gone backwards to when articles did start to rank. We had those multiple checks there. So I think we kind of operated like a newsroom would with 3-4 layers of editorial. Now, if you have a 3 or 4 person team, it doesn't work like that, and just the speed, we definitely slowed down to get some of that quality. But ultimately, like if our content doesn't rank because we didn't put in the time, or it's error filled and people leave the page pretty quickly, it's a big waste of time. So I think even that big editorial process we had still didn't even amount to 10% of the whole process. So that's that, like, it seems like a lot, but if it's going to make the difference at the end of the day, which I think it did, especially on that SEO, that final edit, we had a woman who's really good at the on-page stuff, looking at the keyword densities and different, I don't know, she was just really good. She understood on-page stuff really well and could take writing those right there and do it pretty quickly. So if you take that extra step, I think we saw huge results because of, those layers.
Absolutely. Well, Jakub, I know we are short on time, but before you go, have been waiting to ask you this fun question. I mean, you teach students at college, right? At the university. How has that been? And, what do you actually teach them, and how is the experience?
Sure. So I started teaching right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I've gotten a crash course in being a professor. So I teach digital journalism classes. So 2 of them are just quick workshops. It's like one is a Adobe Audition audio editing class, and then another one is page design. So we teach InDesign, do newspaper, magazine layout, and some various other stuff. That those 2 classes actually have some, PR, communications, marketing students. So they're not journalism specific. And then the other one is an introduction to online journalism. So it's, production and reporting. So it's like 1 week we do WordPress, 1 week we do audio editing, 1 week video editing. So we want students to come out of it and say, get a job, and for me, I think the nice thing is I've got this marketing experience, I've got this journalism experience, so I can show them these are the skill. I use these skills in content marketing, but I have a journalism degree. You could use this in communications or PR. And so giving somebody that ability to not just be a writer or a video producer, but then do a little bit of everything. I think that's how a lot of the jobs go, especially early career, both at the marketing and, the journalism kind of fields. Like at G2, I did a little bit of everything when we started, right? I thought I was going to be a writer, and you specialized on the road, but one day you could be asked to make a graphic. The next one you're editing a podcast. The next one you're editing a report. It's kind of all over the place. So it was, it's been, and then it's gone fine. It's, teaching in a pandemic's wild stuff. But yeah, it's been really rewarding. It was kind of, G2, we had a lot of 22 to 25-year-olds, and we're kind of like taking people in their first or second job and, training. So it's just like one step before that. So it's interesting to see.
Sounds really exciting. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you, and hopefully we'll catch up again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really fun.